Hello, my name is Matthew Marquardt and welcome to the second video in the Unreal Tournament 4 level creation basics series. In this particular video we're going to cover how you start your own map, and we're going to talk about the actual process within the map, how you get bots to work in there, and basically anything you need to know in order to get a map done. Now, the first thing I do want to mention is Epic does have their own tutorial on this. The video does assume a couple of things that I want to talk about that is extra, but some of this content that I'm talking about here is also in here. So if you want to watch this, here's the link. I will also put it in the description below. And actually I'm uploading my other video there, but in this particular one you can see right here, here's the actual video for building a map from scratch. It's about 13 minutes long. Okay, so I'll minimize that. So now let's talk about how you start your own map. What you do in order to start a map, you just go up to File, you go New Level, and then I would choose Default so that there's a skybox or whatever. I mean, if you're more advanced, you understand how to create your own skybox, things like that, you just use an empty level, but I suggest using Default and then deleting the ground object and working from there. All right, now I'm not going to do this because I don't want to start from scratch. There are a couple of things I want to use in this editor to talk about, but that's what you would do. You would start your map. Once you've actually got the level started, I would immediately then save it, right? And so that you can keep saving it over and over again after the fact. Obviously, you can go to File, you go to Save As, and then you can just save it in the same folder as all the other ones right here, once again, which is Content, Restricted Assets, Maps. Okay, but what you want to make sure you do in order for it to be a deathmatch, because this is going to be a deathmatch player or deathmatch level, okay, is you want to name it DM. So when you come down here, call it DM, standing for deathmatch, dash. You can see it, the same thing up here, and then just name it whatever you want after the fact. Then you can just hit save, then you're good to go. Once again, I'm not going to do this, but there's an important reason why you do DM, because the engine knows, depending on what it's starting, which game type it is, and there are certain things that are loaded up when the game type is set a certain way. So definitely call it DM dash, and then whatever, so that we know it is our deathmatch level. All this content, of course, is up here. I didn't highlight that section, but that's what I just talked about is right here. So always save it as DM dash name of your map. Okay, so now let's talk about the deathmatch level creation process. Okay, I'm not going to go over all of these things. I just want you to understand the process, okay, because it's kind of out of the scope of the particular video. But obviously, whenever you do a map, you want to start with your pre-production, okay? So pre-production can start with sketches and ideas. Of course, a paper map, right, or a floor plan, kind of a top-down view. Now remember, whenever you make a paper map, it isn't set in stone, right? It just kind of helps you understand where to go. Of course, as you start designing the map, you might find out that something's not fun, or maybe you want to change it. That's fine, right? But a paper map is the pre-production stage so that you have an idea of where to go. And I think it is really, really important that you always have an idea of where you're going before you start. Okay, so that is your pre-production. Now the next thing you do is blocking out your BSP. Okay, so you've watched other videos, or you understand about a little bit about Unreal. You know how BSP works, right? So if we go over here to geometry, here's all your BSP. You can drag something out into the scene, right, and it creates an object that you can interact with. You can scale it. You can do all sorts of stuff with it, rotate it. You can use subtractive to cut holes out, kind of like you can see here, so on and so forth. Of course, dragging that into the scene totally broke the lighting. That's what's going on with the lighting there, but we don't have to worry about that. That's not overly important, right? So I can take this object and delete it, okay, and it's still in the scene unless I rebuild it, but I'm not worried about that, which is up here. Okay, so you guys should know how to do that, right? You create your basic geometry, and you kind of see here, you know, we've got some interesting shapes even in this one, right, you know, for their little map. And once again, I do recommend that you load up some of the other maps, right? If you open up some of these maps, you know, like your Bio Tower, Chill, Outpost 23, Underland, and so forth, right? These are going to help you understand how they design maps, right? And how flow is kind of like how you move around in the level. But that's basically how you do it. And you would do what is known as gray boxing, right? Or white boxing, if you've heard that term before. So you're not putting any art in, you're just testing it so that everything is exactly the way you want it. And that's that second part here, which is play test iterate, which is make changes, and then repeat until it feels good. Once the level feels good, you move on from that section. Okay, and this typically takes some of the longest is the original getting the design down, because once the design down, everything else kind of goes a little bit faster. Okay, the second stage, all right, which I'm going to cover all of this right here, all right, is your special design elements. So if you have other things within the map that are required to play the map, if they have like like if you actually play one of the free maps that they have, I think it's bio something, right? I'll open that up again. So whoops, I don't want to do new level. I want to open. So we'll go file, open level. So this one right here, bio tower. If you actually go in there, you'll see that they have bio rifles like in the air, and it moves them around, and it just shoots this bio weapon stuff all over the place, so it makes it harder to go to some of the sections where they have like their super uber power-ups. They have like a power-up on the ground with this one here. In fact, I should just load that one up and kind of show you some of that stuff, but I will actually load it up later. But the idea is if you have any special mechanics, right, that risk reward as far as getting some of these extra things like that, or jump pads or elevators, this is where you do it, right? So I just want to talk quickly about your jump pads and your elevators, which are over here too. They are pretty simple. If you click on a jump pad, in order to use a jump pad, they are just called base jump pads. So if you type that in, you can see right here, that's the name of it. So if you type it down here, I have the power up base from the last video still there, but if you type whatever you want in there, including base jump pad, you can drag that into the scene. It looks like this, pretty simple object, right? There's a couple things about it though. It drops in the scene, and it will also have this thing called a jump target. The jump target is where you want it to go. So if I say fly up here and I want to have this thing bounce me up here, I would lift it above, right? Not that far so it doesn't fly me out of the map. We could put it right here, right? And so now if I was to say jump in the game, so let's play from here. All right, touch the jump pad and completely fly out of the world. That's awesome. Anyways, now let me fly back up in here. Yeah, so I did put it a little too far. Of course, you don't want to do that and kill your players. But yeah, that's basically how it works. It's pretty simple, so it's a quick way to get up somewhere really fast without having to do like tons of stairs. So you don't always have to feel like you got to create these maps where the player has to literally walk up 500 ramps to get up to a certain point. You can mix things like that in, but you can also put in jump pads which help out. And as you can see there, it's pretty simple, right? Just place the object where you want it, hit N to snap it to the floor, right? And then place your jump target any direction you want it to go, and it will send the player in that direction. Now the other one here is your elevators, which they do have stock in this editor too. Those are called generic lift. So if I come over here and I'm to copy that and paste that into here, right, and we can get rid of that, that little bullet point there, right, you'll see right here generic lift. This one, not the S underscore, but the generic lift. If you drag that into the scene, this is how the lifts work. So your lift looks like this. Okay, it's just kind of a generic object. Similar aspect to the jump pad as we see here. You just grab this thing right here and move it to where you want it to go. So that's the height of where it will go. So if I touch this, it'll just drag, it'll bring me all the way up here. Now there are some settings here, how long it takes to get up to the top, right? How long it waits when it gets up to the top, 1 second here, and so on and so forth, right? Or you can even have it just auto move without the player even touching it. But yeah, if I go in here and play from here, so there you go. That's kind of how they work. So you can just drop a couple of those in, right, to also get players up quicker. Okay. You can also add any other special blueprints. Now this is once again outside the scope of this particular lesson, but if you want to do any other type of design elements and things like that, you can add those in there, right, using blueprints. And then once again, play test, iterate, and repeat until everything feels good. Okay. So once all that's done, then you do your weapon, ammo, item placement, right, and health placement. We talked about those in the last video. So these are all those items there. You'll go in there and do that. As I said before in the last video, I give you the names of all the objects and things like that on the side so that you can type any of those in and find them. right, and place them around. But a couple of things to keep in mind, as I mentioned before, limit the amount of super powered weapons you have and super powered items, right? Don't put more than one shield belt or a super health in the level. It's just a little too much, right? You can use these little health vials to lead players around your map, kind of like breadcrumbs, right? You can even put them up ramps and things like that. Encourage players to kind of go different places, right, that they might not have thought about before within your map. Because like I said, a lot of these will act as ways to get players to move around. Oh, there's an item, and they'll go and chase those. Another important thing is to put ammo, right? Don't just put your weapons in the scene. Put ammo and put like maybe, in most cases, 2 or 3 extra ammos near the weapon placement. Not literally on top of it, but kind of close to that same area, right? So that you can pick up more ammo because, yes, there is a limited amount of ammo. Right, so those are just a couple of things to keep in mind, of course, when you're placing in your weapons, your ammo, your items, and your health. Once again, you go in there and kind of play, test, and iterate, make sure everything feels right. Now, in order for you actually to play a game, okay, you need to have your player spawns, right, and your bot navigation in there. I'm going to highlight all of this, and we're going to talk about this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to load up that level I was talking about. So we're going to open up level here, and we'll do the bio tower. Since it's one of the smaller levels, I'm not going to save what I did in there. So it should open up fast. Yeah, it did because I had already loaded up before. Your computer might take a lot longer, especially the first time around. But you can see right here that this map is filled with all those things, right? There's a little ramp right there. Right up here is where the bio rifles are, right, that shoot down, because there is a double damage down here. So it'll actually shoot a whole bunch of goo down there. So once again, it is that risk reward. They even have another section with a rocket launcher that does that too, but I can just jump in and play it a little bit. So we'll come in here, play from here. Whoop, that's loud. As you can see there, right, it had the health files all the way across. Right, there's a little noise right here. That's the bio stuff shooting. So if I was to jump down right here, whoops, let's jump up. You see right there, these things will actually go on a blueprint, and they'll just shoot a bunch of slime right there. Just kind of an idea. I was just pausing because I don't want it to be too loud while I'm talking. I'm gonna jump out for a second. All right, so just so you guys can hear me a little bit better. But yeah, so you can see kind of how that works, right? So if you have any extra blueprints, you can throw that stuff in there. But let me show you quickly how you can how you can basically make it so that players can play in your map. First things first, you got to have your player spawns, okay? So UT team underscore, or not underscore, but space player start is how you do that. So you can even go up to, I believe it is under, let's see, if I just click on all classes, I think we can find it in here. So if we scroll to the bottom, where are you? So yeah, it should be UT what team? Yeah, UT team. So using the alphabet, we can figure this out here. Scroll all the way down. I can do it. Yeah, you can see there's a ton of these, and there you go. UT team player start. So you'll drag those in, right, into the scene. You'll put as many of those into the scene as you want players to be at a minimum. So if, say, you want 10 players in your map, you'll put a minimum of 10 of them in there, okay, so that up to 10 people can play in your map. Now, you will notice that when you select these, they have, if we go to, let's see right here, let's go to a different view here. So I'll go in a kind of a top-down view, and I'm going to hit F to frame the object, kind of zoom in here. All right, so it's hard to see because of all the stuff kind of floating around, but you'll notice that each one of these player starts has this blue arrow. This blue arrow is where the player faces when they spawn. It is important that you rotate the object and face that arrow whatever direction you want the player to run when they initially spawn. So say you put a spawn point in the corner of a room, you want them to run away from the corner, not spawn looking at the corner, right? Or to be a jerk, you can literally just put it on the edge of a cliff, and the moment they spawn, they will run right off the cliff. I've seen it. It's kind of funny at first, but of course, as the player, yeah, you're not going to be too happy about that. So keep that in mind. Always place it and aim it the direction you want. That's pretty much all there is to these, as long as they're not in the ground. That's important too. So I'm going to just go back to perspective. But yeah, you don't want them to be in the ground, right? I'm going to hit F again to frame myself on that. There we go. Just make sure they're kind of floating over the ground. You should be set. So as I said before, put as many of them in as you want players in your map. Okay, now we're going to talk about your modes, volume, nav mesh. So if you actually come over here to modes, right, go to volumes, and then you go find nav mesh bounds volume. Okay, so once again, alphabetical order here, but we have a nav mesh bounds volume. Sorry, if you drag that into the scene, it's going to take a little second here. Okay, so this object you would, and there's a bunch of them already in here. That's what all of these are, as you can see all over the place, these boxes that are in here. Wherever you want your bots to go, you want to place these around in the scene, right? So one of the easiest ways to do it, of course, is just make a big box that's bigger than the entire level. So scale this box up as big as the level goes, and then rebuild pathing, which is, you can hit build, which builds everything, but if you don't want to build everything, you can come down here and just build paths. Right? And then once you do that, then it will basically create wherever the bots can go. So make sure that you only have them where you want the bots to go. All right. It does talk a little bit more about this in a little better detail in this tutorial video. If you want to watch that, it's towards the end of that video. Okay, and then if you want to see where bot pathing is, so I'm going to delete this particular one out, but you want to see where the bot pathing is. Once it's been done, you hit P, the hotkey P, and anything, like you see how the ground was all green, that showed you what the bots can run on, right? And then you'll also notice, okay, if we move around, these lines everywhere. This is all the bot pathing, which, you know, when you have a full-on level, it's going to look ridiculous. But basically what it does is every item, right? So you can even see here, we got some health, or not some health, some ammo next to the items here. But every single item acts as a node, right? So you'll have these lines drawing from every node close to it and so on. So it will look like a total cluster of millions of things or whatever, but that's fine. That's kind of what you want in order to make sure that the bots are moving appropriately. Right? But once you have all of that in there and you've built it, so you've built the paths or whatever, and we can take a look at those. Remember, hit P to shut that stuff off, right? You need to test it. So how do you test it? Well, before I jump in game, because it does get loud in the game, okay, what I'm going to tell you is you want to hit the tilde key, right? Which is this right here, is the key right next to the number 1. Okay, that will bring up your console. In the console, you'll type in add bots, space, and then type the number of bots you want to add. So let's do that. So I'm going to jump in and do that. So play from here, tilde, and then down here type in add bots. All right, so add bots, space, and then the number. So I'll put like 3 and hit enter, and there they go. Now I'm going to escape out of that because it's just too loud and I can't talk. But that's how you can test your level. So once you've added the navigation, you can add bots by, once again, simply hitting tilde, right? Going into the console, typing in add bots, space, the number of bots you want to add. And keep in mind that if you got 10 player starts, you know, and you don't want to type in add bots 10 if there's 10 of them, because you count as a player. So do add bots, right? And then space 9, and you'll have 9 bots and yourself in order to test your map. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about as far as making the map is to beautify it. As you can see here, they've done a great job of that. Okay, and beautifying entails, and I did forget, right, do playtest, iterate, and repeat once again, just like all the other settings, right? You always want to do that to make a good map. But yeah, lastly is the beautify, right? You don't want to spend all this time making it pretty and then realize it doesn't work or it's not fun and have to change things. So you tend to save that for last. But things such as the content browser and filters, this is great here. Now I've been typing things in here, but if we come in here and we go to the very top of content, so we're on the very top of content, and you switch the filters to be materials, you'll actually find every single material, right, that they use in all of the levels that come here, and you'll see there's a ton of them. So you can drag any of these materials onto any of your BSP, including, and if you're not sure what a material is and you like a level and you're like, hey, I like this material, you can click on the wall and take a look at what the material is, right? So we can see right here, this is the material. Find that material down here, drag it onto your wall within your map, and then you've got the same thing and so on, right? So that's how you can figure that stuff out, all right? Same thing here, surface material is going to show me, it's the name of it. So if I want to use that in my map, I can do that too. Or of course, just find them and drag them in here. And there's a lot of different materials you can use, right, that come with all those free levels that come with the game. All right, now if you switch this from material to, say, static meshes, right, we can use all of the meshes. right? And so, once again, if you don't know what a mesh is, or you like a mesh in a particular level, right? I want to know what this particular mesh is here. We can click on it and see the mesh, right? SM door A underscore window, whatever, right? Hole, angled, yada, 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 right? There's a whole ton of it right in there. But that's how you can find them in maps that already exist. But of course, you can find anything down here and drag into the scene. So let's just say I want like a stone wall here or something like that. I can drag that into the scene. And by the way, most of the time, and you'll see this too, I'm going to hit F, right? So this particular object apparently is way out in the middle of nowhere. Keep in mind, right, that some of these are meant for decorations. So when you drag them in, you'll notice that the pivot's way out here. I taught you guys in a different video how to change the pivot so it's not flying off in no man's land. It does make it a little bit awkward to move things around, but you can do like that. But like I said, you can drag any of these items, right? And we have a tree in here. I can drag this tree into the scene and then use that, right? And of course, this is going out into the world, so we don't necessarily want that, but yeah, you can scale it, you can do whatever you want, right? You can click off of it, and there it is, there's the tree. So you can populate your levels with any of these meshes. Now, keep in mind, a lot of times when you first drag out a mesh or a texture, it will pause for a little bit, right, as it loads. Once you've got one in the scene, when you drag it in again, it will be faster. Of course, you can't always duplicate meshes by hitting Control D, right, and then having a duplicate, right? We can even go up to the top and edit. We can duplicate, or actually not Control D, but Control W, sorry. And then you can copy and paste too, but this is just one action of basically copying and pasting at the same time. And then also, if you want, you can hold down Alt and just drag, and you'll make a copy of your static mesh also. Okay, so that's kind of how you can populate that stuff or whatever. And then lastly, right, there's lighting. I'm not really going to get into volumes because I'm not too concerned that you guys have those in there. But volumes, you can do things like post-process volumes, which when you go into it changes what you see. You can drag one of those into the scene, fly your camera into it, play around with the details to get it to look a certain way or whatever. There's kill volumes that if you run into, you automatically die. Blocking volumes, which just basically act as collision. So if you run into them, you can't move, right, any further. So if, say, something doesn't have collision but you want it to, you can just drag a blocking volume in there, right? But in general, right, lighting is the other thing. You want to kind of add some lighting that you can see in the world. I'm not going to cover lighting because that was covered in other videos, but that is the process, right? So basically, with all of this information you find over here, this is all you really need to know in order to get started on your own deathmatch level. So hopefully you guys make some awesome stuff. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.